former Fulton County District Attorney and Sheriff.
Formerly a judge, and he knows a little bit about how these things go.
From Mohawk Valley, legal eagle, lawman.
He is the Sheriff of Fulton County, New York. Just such an amazing guy.
This is the Rich Giardino Show, where the Constitution, crime, and politics meet.
You're listening to the Rich Giardino Show. Our guest today is Joe Gamaldi. Joe is the vice president of the Fraternal Order of Police, which represents over 370,000 police officers and 2,200 lodges across the country. Joe was born and raised in Long Island. He started his career as a member of the NYPD in 2005. He had a minor in political science and sociology from the University of Hartford. And he transferred to Houston, where he's now a lieutenant on a night shift. Shortly after graduation from the academy, Joe earned his master's degree from Long Island University in Homeland Security. And Joe Gamaldi is one of those people that I say the quote from Edmund Burke fits perfectly. The only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good men to do nothing. And Joe Gamaldi stands up. He's a good man. He defends police officers. He explains the challenges we face in these chaotic times. But what's interesting about Joe, he's taken fire in the media. He's taken fire from newspapers. He's taken fire from magazines and from some cable shows because of his pro-law enforcement supporting the Blue Line. And it's an honor and a privilege to have Joe with us today. We've known each other about 3 years. We both were on a panel at a national bail conference in Las Vegas. Thank you for being on, Joe. I really, really appreciate you taking the time.
No, Rich, thank you so much for having me on. I'm excited to be here. And also thank you for that wonderful introduction. I'm going to have to slip you $20 after that, because you really built me up. Now I got something I got to live up to here. So no, thank you so much for having me on.
Hey, you don't have to slip me $20. Just like, share, and subscribe.
There you go.
I'm learning the lingo, you know. They tell me I'm on Rumble, and I keep calling it Ramble, you know. And, so I really appreciate it. Tell us a little bit about your background, because not only are you the vice president of a 370,000 individuals that you represent as vice president, but you're also a line lieutenant in Houston. And you work the night shift. So tell us, I don't understand the size of Houston. I know it's huge. So tell us a little bit about that and what your daily duties entail as a lieutenant.
Yeah, so we're 650 square miles across Houston. So we're quite large. I'm the night shift lieutenant over our largest night shift division, which is West Side. I supervise 55 officers and 10 sergeants. And I will say that I have the best night shift in the entire country, bar none. I will put them up against anybody. My guys and gals, they work their tails off from the start of shift all the way to the end. They don't really get that lull like most night shifts get. They're an exceptional group of officers. I mean, honestly, I'm honored to be their lieutenant. They work so hard and do such a great job. And then during the day, I get my little bit of sleep at end of shift, about 5-6 hours. And then I'm right back up on conference calls for the FOP or handling any issues that may be going on. I help run our social media platforms, which, by the way, shameless plug, follow us on Instagram, and you can follow us on Twitter as well. Follow me. Jumping on conference calls, handling any issues, and also, dealing with all the media inquiries and doing interviews. But I mean, essentially what my role at the FOP is, aside from the day-to-day duties, it's to speak out for law enforcement. Because for entirely too long, we had abdicated our voice of law enforcement to, police chiefs who had, they were worried about the politics, and they were worried about offending their bosses. So they weren't really stepping up defending cops. Or you had retired cops who were just interested in their next book deal. But no, we needed to have a voice that was giving unfiltered information from the line patrol guys as to how they were feeling, just the experiences they were going through. And that's what my role is at the FOP. I just want to be a voice for law enforcement to make sure that the public hears from us unfiltered.
And Joe, it's important that I know many of you have listened to Joe. You've heard him on national radio. You've seen him on cable news. He's a frequent guest on Fox News. I get jealous because for every one time I appear, he's on there 24. I don't know how he does it, but he's been on Newsmax. He's been on a lot of other cable. But what I really admire is, like you said, you do what the rubber meets the road every night, and you're hands on, and then you turn around and you relay that to the public. And what you said is so frustrating to me, because a lot of sheriffs won't stand up. We had a situation in New York where Andrew Cuomo, our illustrious governor, wanted police to count how many people were going to people's house at Thanksgiving and limit it to 10. And I said, no, we're not doing that. And once I opened my mouth, other people stood up. But in the beginning, everyone was silent, crickets. It's like you said, I think the chiefs of police, commissioners, and superintendents are afraid that the masters they serve will fire them or terminate their contracts. Sheriffs, union representatives, vice presidents, presidents have an obligation to step up, because if we don't, really, who will? And Joe, so tell us, though, a little bit about the Fraternal Order Police, because it's a huge organization, and I don't think people understand the nature of how large it is and how long you've been the vice president and how you got there.
Yeah, so I've been the vice president now for about 4.5 years. We have 375,000 members across the country, and even in a couple different countries. We are the largest police union in the entire world. There's nobody that's larger than us. We are in 48 out of 50 states, but probably going to be 50 out of 50 here in a very short period of time, to have 50 lodges, state lodges in each state. And basically our function is to stand up for law enforcement. We provide labor services, legal protection, and a host of other options for officers. So I encourage anybody who may be interested in joining the FOP, you can go to our website at fop.net and look at all of the resources that we have. And, to touch on something you mentioned, talking about sheriffs and chiefs speaking up, it's like, people need to understand that there's a war on cops in this country right now that is raging. We had 378 police officers shot last year. That is a 60% increase since 2018 when we started tracking the data. And it's getting worse. We've already had over 140 police officers shot this year. We're outpacing the numbers from last year. So last year was a historic year. It's getting even worse now. We're seeing one police officer shot every 21 hours. And I try to make it clear to not only labor leaders, law enforcement labor leaders, but also chiefs and sheriffs, like, this should not be a controversial issue to speak up and say, we don't want people shooting cops, or the violence against law enforcement is not acceptable. And the frustrating part is that it's within our capacity to change this. And it starts at the top. President Biden should be loudly condemning the violence against law enforcement. House Republicans should be passing the Protect and Serve Act, which would make it a federal crime to knowingly assault a police officer. We need to stop the revolving door criminal justice system, because 85% of cop killers have been arrested before. 71% are convicted felons. So if we could get a handle on, and by the way, also, like, maybe we could just stop treating cops like crap in America like we have for the last decade. If we do all of these things, we can change the narrative that surrounds law enforcement, change the perception of law enforcement, and stop this violence in its tracks. So, because the path we're on right now, Rich, it's not sustainable. And we're going to work with targets on our backs every single day. And I'm just tired of seeing my friends get shot, to be honest with you.
Hey, Joe, tell them about at the Fraternal Order Police where they can see your daily updates, because not only do you do more memorials, which is terrible that we have to do memorials to police shot, but you also have a list of the shootings. So what's the site that they go to see that? Because I have that on my feed.
Yeah, so they can, one of the best ways is just to follow us on Twitter at GLFOP, or you can follow us on Instagram at FOP National, or you can follow me on Instagram at Joe Gamaldi, or on Twitter at Joe Gamaldi. We put out information there. You can also find the same information at FOP.net. I just know that most people are always scrolling on social media, so I always point them in that direction. But this is factual data. We mine this data. We've started since 2018 so that we can provide the basically community, we can provide citizens, we can provide politicians with facts. So that when I say there's a war on cops, because believe me, there's still academics and politicians and media types that go, oh, there's no war on cops in this country. And while they sit their asses safely behind their desks, I will remind you, but they'll say, oh, there's no war on cops. Oh, yeah, here's the statistical data showing you. And this is just shootings. We're not even covering the fact that The NYPD last year had their highest recorded number of officers assaulted in their history. I mean, it's completely out of control. It's a stain on our society. It's an embarrassment to our country, and it needs to stop.
And what's nice is we both have our blue line flags, because you know what? I don't care what they say. I'm proud to be in law enforcement. Before this, I was a judge and I was a district attorney, and I've always supported Back the Blue. And there's those, like, you got attacked. But listen, cheap plug. If you like a conversation like Joe in my conversation, please like, share, and subscribe on Apple, on Spotify, on YouTube, and on Rumble or Ramble, whatever, and follow on other platforms. Follow the Rich Giardino Show. Joe, I agree with you. And you know what I always say? I say we're the only profession in this country where you call us pigs, you call us racist, you shoot bottle rockets at us, you ambush us, you say fry them up like bacon, and then you call 911. We don't say, what's your race? What's your identity today? We don't say, what's your religion? What your politic is? We say, hey, what's your emergency and where are you? And our dispatchers, who are the front line, who deal with everybody, they send help as soon as possible. And people forget that. And I agree with you. We have a target on our back. And what sickens me is when I see the same politicians who demand to defund the police, who don't enforce us, who've turned it around so that when police officers are involved in something, they have no presumption of innocence. They are the target in courts. They're the target of the Soros-funded DAs. And they're the ones who the attorney generals in the liberal states like here in California go after, rather than the criminals who they should be taking off the street. So tell me this, the dynamics of what's going on the college campuses. We have protests, some have become violent, but in 2020, when all this was going on, police were told to stand down, city halls were being burnt, police precincts were being taken over, billions of dollars was being destroyed, and the politicians wanted the police to stand down. Now in most cities, except for DC, it appears that they want the police to come in and clear the campuses. How do you make that any logic to people to figure out the messages that are sent to police, the wrong messages?
Yeah, well, I'm not sure there's much logic to it. And I learned a long time ago to not try to figure out crazy, which is what a lot of these politicians are. But I'll tell you, just to be clear to folks, police officers respect your right to protest probably more than any other group in this country. It is hardwired into our DNA to protect your right to protest. We will even stand there while you call us murderers and protect your right to do so. But the minute you cross the line, the minute you assault someone, you destroy property, you commit crimes, you are no longer a protester. You are a rioter, and you should be arrested and prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, because you are taking advantage of the fact that there are other people who do want to peacefully protest. So you should be held accountable. So I find it very, very interesting now that politicians who wanted to defund the police, who loudly and proudly called us murderers, now want us to go in there and clear out these college campuses, but also don't want anyone to be arrested either. They want to set us up for failure. So go in there and clear those out, but we don't want you to arrest anyone. Well, that's not how this works. The world ain't all sunshine and lollipops. This is reality. When people commit crimes, they should be held accountable. And if we really wanted to stop all of this rioting on our college campuses, here's an idea. If you engage in rioting behavior, you're immediately expelled from the university and you are prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. This ain't rocket science, folks. You start holding people accountable, and I mean really accountable for their actions, you'll see how damn quick these things get folded up.
Hey, Joe, that's across the board. There's no consequences. There's no bail. In our state, it's ridiculous. There's no bail, repeat offenders. And you know what the answer is? Well, we have to have a retail task force on retail crime. No, put the repeat offenders in jail on bail. And as a lawyer and a former judge and DA, I understand the purpose of bail is to ensure people return to court. But in you and I, in our jobs along the way, we used to take guys who were getting drunk and abusive to their spouses. We'd take them to the court. We'd set sergeants bail. They'd go in jail for the weekend. They'd sober up. They'd go back to work Monday, and they'd go to counseling and go to court. Now we can't even do that. We can't even hold them on a misdemeanor or a low-level felony. So the tool, the other thing is, And now I sound like you. I get going because you got me all worked up, Joe.
That's all right. Go ahead. It's your show. Go nuts. Let's go.
Well, you know what? I'm trying to figure out where to put my hands. I only have such a big screen and two Italians going at it with our hands flinging around, So, but what bothers me the most is drug treatment courts. I was a drug treatment court judge. I saw more successes when we cleaned up people. We used the jail and bail to get them into treatment. When they messed up, we set bail on them. They went to jail for a week or two till they were ready to go back inpatient. Now we can't even set bail on the people who have the problems. And, the other thing that bothers me is the phrase over-policing. You're over-policing neighborhoods. No, we police to the statistics where the crime is. And frankly, I'm sick and tired of them setting up this false narrative that all police are racists and all African Americans or Black people hate police. In fact, most Black people want responsible police in their neighborhood protecting them and their family, but you never hear that. They don't get that message out. And even more so, do you hear the names of the 12-year-old and the 8-year-old and the 10-year-old that get killed in drug drive-bys in Chicago and Baltimore in the big cities? No. So we are at a disadvantage. Time for another plug. So listen, if you like our conversation, please like, share, and listen to the Rich Giardino Show on Apple, Spotify, Ramble or Rumble, and YouTube. Joe, tell us about that though. How do we, besides people like you and me speaking up, how do we get the narrative? How do we get the press that's so liberal to the core? We had a press conference in Albany with the Sheriff Association a couple of weeks ago, and when they got talking about retail stores and the retail theft problem and the task force the governor was setting up, and one of the reporters looked at me and said, well, what suggestions do you have for the big box stores to work better with police and to reduce shoplifting? I looked at him, I said, did you seriously just ask me that? I said, this is my response, is follow the law, don't be a criminal. Yeah. Don't steal from other people. What is so hard about that concept, But go ahead and tell me what you think we need to do better. People like you and me. I mean, we got to continue to do what we're doing, but what else can we do? How do we get, I think there's a big silent majority in this country that backs the blue and likes what we do, and they're afraid. They're afraid to speak up because they don't want to be criticized. Just like you got attacked. Oh, this man is dangerous because he supports police. Yeah, you're dangerous because you support police officers. Yeah. But tell us, give me and our listeners what they can do to help.
Yeah, well, I think the first step is everybody needs to understand that this is a crisis and it's all hands on deck. Everybody needs to be speaking out against the violence against law enforcement, and everyone needs to be speaking about the violence in our communities. For 3 years straight, we've had over 20,000 homicides in the United States. We haven't seen that number since the mid-1990s. I mean, it's not good. The homicide rate for Black males over the last few years has now risen to 12 times the rate of everyone else. No one's talking about it. So we need to continue to raise awareness. If you are a police officer or a supporter of law enforcement, share all of this information that we're putting out on social media. We have a huge network of people, of millions of people that support us. Share this stuff. Make sure people are aware of it. But to drill down like real deep, there are elections coming up, right? And as we get closer to a presidential election, all the oxygen is going to get sucked out of the room for the presidential candidates. And listen, that's important. But you know what else is really, really important? Your local races in your community. That's where you get the biggest bang for your buck and the most changes that you can see. So make sure that you're educating yourself on the DA's races, the judge races, the county executive, school board races. All of these local races, you need to educate yourself and make sure that you're voting accordingly. And what do I mean when I say voting accordingly? If any candidate is not standing on a bedrock platform of public safety and law and order, vote their ass out. Because the entire community, it will only thrive. Education, job opportunities, anything that you can think of will only thrive if we have a strong foundation of public safety. So vote for those candidates. And if you feel inclined, take an extra step. Block walk for them. You can do a phone bank. You can talk to your neighbors about these candidates. But we need to all just stop. And I get it. Somebody's listening to this right now going, Joe, I appreciate you saying that, but I'm busy. I got to get the kids to soccer practice. I got to get to the dance recital. I got to do this. I got to do that. I get it. But you have to take an active role if you want things to get better. You need to be the man in the arena. You can't be on the outside looking at how everything's going, saying, man, I wish things could get better, but what could I do? You got to get involved. And at the very least, make sure you're voting in your local races so that we can get these public safety candidates in positions of authority.
Joe, it's so important. You're right. And you know what happens? They have used and I use they as the monster, the individuals who want to diminish law enforcement, give more rights to the accused than to law-abiding citizens. They've used the pandemic. They've used the election. They've used the fact that you're taking your kid to soccer practice or getting them to school or doing all these ridiculous things. I say ridiculous things that distract you from what's going on. Mm-hmm. And what happens is, I said to somebody the other day, I said, if people like you, Joe, and I don't stand up and speak up, stand up and speak out on behalf of law enforcement and what's going on, a year from now, 2 years from now, people are going to say, wow, when did that happen?
Yeah.
Wow, how did that happen? And if we don't, you and I know, we're going to look at ourselves in the mirror and say, we should have done something. And that's what I admire about you. You're using your position as a platform to educate the public. We have seen people retiring early. We've seen we've had to lower, at the same time they want us to increase our standards. We're lowering our standards because no one wants to be a police officer because they don't want to be a target. And they get it. They get that they're going to be a target. And I can't tell you how important I view what you do in your capacity. I wish we had more partners who joined us in doing this, you know. And by the way, I want to say, if you listen to Joe, we can try and get you a transfusion so you have some energy after working a night shift, being up half the day, being with your kids, and then coming on and doing
it's energy drinks. I'm just constantly drinking energy drinks and coffee. That's how I keep going.
So in any event, we just been bombarded, and I really appreciate what you do. And I mean that from inside, because I just feel like sometimes like nobody's listening. And I hope that this show will have people listening, because the actual title is, you know, where the, this is the Rich Giardino podcast, where crime, the Constitution, and politics meet. And the whole point is this, and you just said it. It doesn't matter about all your rights, your right to free speech, your right to bear arms, your right to be safe and secure in your home. Those rights don't matter if you don't have public safety, if your kids aren't safe going to school, if you don't feel your parents are safe in a nursing home or going to the store, if you're not safe going to work or on the highways. So without public safety, nothing else matters. And I said we should have a litmus test on any law that's passed or any bill they're considering is, how does this make it safer for the law-abiding citizen? And if you can't answer that question, then that bill shouldn't become a law. That's all I know. So, hey, listen, I really want to thank you for taking time to be with us. Is there anything else that I missed? Give a plug again as to where to find you, because I know people. We're gonna put it on all my platforms, whatever platforms I have, but we're gonna put it out there so people can follow you. But hit it again so people know.
Yeah, for sure. Well, again, Rich, thank you so much for having me on. It's been an absolute pleasure. You can follow me on Instagram at Joe Gamaldi, on Twitter at Joe Gamaldi. You can also follow the National FOP at GLFOP on Twitter, at FOP National on Instagram. We're also on Facebook, but you can just search our names on Facebook and find us real easy. And appreciate y'all giving us a follow. Please share the information we put out. You know, we have a massive network of law enforcement across this country and family and friends, and we can really use our voice and make it an agent of change and really get this country back on track.
Hey, Joe, stay safe. Thank you for being on, and I really appreciate what you do every day. And be safe in Houston. I've been to Houston several times, to the Galleria. I've been down there to the Walk. It's a beautiful city. And thank you for doing what you do every day. And I really thank you for coming on our show. I appreciate it. Have a safe night and have a safe year. Thanks, Joe.
Like and subscribe to The Rich Giardino Show, part of the Elite Influencer Network, wherever you get your podcasts. And we'll see you next time on The Rich Giardino Show, where the Constitution, crime, and politics meet.